Hey, what's going on, Warhammer World? This is Obsidiananubis, and I'm back with another Ninth Age battle report. I know, finally, right? So this battle is the second battle in a series of campaigns in the Southlands. So this one is titled To the High Ground. So the plot behind this particular game is the Empire has sent out multiple forces to find a suitable campsite to build a fort from which they can then begin to search the jungles to find gold. The Lizardman, or the Saurian Ancient player, is attempting to ambush and wipe out all these units before they can find a suitable location to set up a base. So this was 1,000 points versus 1,000 points of Saurian Ancients versus the Empire of Sonnstahl. So before the battle, we rolled to see what type of event was going on, and this is from the Lustria book, which came out, I believe, in the 7th edition of Warhammer Fantasy. So we rolled 2, which was stifling humidity. So any units with heavy armor or has an armor save of 5+ or better, not counting Scaly Skins, suffer -1 movement. So that affected a couple of my units and none of my opponents because they were more or less scaly skinned or lightly armored. So if we go and look at my army, on my right flank I have 2 groups of 10 Grenadiers. These are both upgrades, which if you look at Brush and Fluff video number 3, I believe, it goes into the background a little bit more about these units. They have been upgraded with pistols and heavy armor. Behind them, I have a group of 20 militia with full command, and on the right group, I have a captain. He is the hero sword. And then to the left of that is another group of 20 militia with full command. And then on my left flank, I have a group of 27 heavy infantry with full command. And because I didn't have a BSB due to the nature of this battle, I give them the gleaming icon so they can reroll 1 failed panic test. With them is the general for this army, which is a witch hunter with heavy armor and a pistol. And then he has the ring of fire as well, since I didn't bring any magic users. And then with them, I have 2 detachments or 2 groups of light infantry or 2 groups of 10 handgunners. So for my opponent, most of the force would be coming in is as an ambush, and my opponent could ambush from any forest. And I'll show you a view of the battlefield in a moment, and there's about 5 or 6 forests throughout the battlefield. The units which my opponent decided not to ambush was a group of 20 Sarius warriors with full command, as you can see there on the left and on top of the hill, and a group of 20 Skink Braves with full command on the right. So here's an overview of what the battle looks like. You can kind of see my forces and my opponent. You can see my opponent's 2 forces, and the rest of the unit army is actually kind of in that top left corner, but they are actually hidden in the forest throughout the battle. So for this, as I said, those units will come on as ambushers through any of the forests, and the restriction was they had to be either jungle swarms or skinks. They couldn't be Saurus warriors or Kroxigor or anything like that, or Cayman, excuse me. They had to be made purely of skinks or jungle swarms. So my opponent is trying to wipe out my force before I get a chance to locate a suitable campsite. So how we play this battle is the second objective is to breakthrough, where you have to get a unit with a banner onto your opponent's deployment zone. So that was the Empire of Sonnstahl, or my objective, is I had to get a banner onto my opponent's side of the battle, while my opponent had to wipe out my units with the BSB. So if I did not get a banner onto my opponent's side by the end of the game, I would lose, and if my opponent managed to wipe out all 3 of my banners before I could get there, then obviously I would lose as well. So we deployed more or less back and forth for my opponent's 2 units, and my opponent went ahead and got the first turn. So Saurian Ancient, turn 1. So on the right flank, my opponent moves up a little bit with these skinks and takes shots at my Grenadiers and manages to kill 1. Other than that, my opponent didn't really do much. They did move their Saurus warriors slightly forward, but I didn't bother taking a picture because it really wasn't anything. So that brings us to Empire of Sonnstahl, turn 1. So for movement, I moved up more or less constant. I have a better picture in just a minute. In Magic Phase, I managed to get 8 power dice, and I was hoping that with my opponent not having any wizard on the table yet, I could get a spell off. However, I only wanted to use 3 dice because if I blew more than that, I might blow up my ring. So, and actually, I think I was out of range anyway. So Magic Phase was really more or less a bust. Here's what you can see a bit of my movement phase in this picture. This is my right flank, and this is my left flank. So that brings us to Saurian Ancient, turn 2. So my opponent did start bringing in some troops. So you can see that there's a jungle swarm that came out in that forest in the top left, and they moved out of it. And then in the bottom left, you can see another group of skinks appear. And then to the right of this picture, you can see another group of skinks in the forest. Here's a better picture of that forest on the right. You can see also a jungle swarm along with my opponent's level 3 Wizard of Wilderness up here. The unit which is actually in the top right, they are the ones which were already on the battlefield and they just marched forward some more. In Magic Phase, my opponent got 8 power dice and managed to get through both the swarm of insects off on my Grenadiers and the Beast Within. So the between shooting and the swarm of insects, my opponent managed to kill 3 of my Grenadiers on this unit and 2 of my militia on the left unit. And my opponent also managed to kill 2 of my heavy infantry. And finally, my opponent also managed to kill off 1 of my Grenadiers on my right flank. So I was starting to lose troops relatively quickly. I mean, it's not a lot of troops, but then again, this is a pretty small battle, only 1,000 points. So, you know, each model is definitely a significant loss. So that brings us to Empire of Sonnstahl turn 2. So in movement, this is what the battlefield looked like before I moved. I declared 2 charges. I declared my militia on the far right with the captain. They charged the skinks which are in the forest straight ahead of them, and the unit, my heavy infantry on the far left, to declare a charge against the jungle swarms. So here's a picture of that left charge. As you can see, I made it into contact. I decided to more or less sacrifice my middle militia unit and just march them straight in front of my opponent's Saurian warriors, so they would be forced to charge them. And on the right flank, my opponent declared a flee reaction, and so fled, and I failed that charge. I turned both my Grenadiers around to just start taking shots at my opponent. And also, this was the first turn I decided to use an encounter. So we had D3 plus 1 encounters throughout the game. I rolled up for my first encounter Carnivorous Plant. I put it on the Saurian warriors. It does 1d3 strength 4 hits, and unfortunately it did nothing. But it's there, so it'll remain on the battlefield unless my opponent manages to get all as well and clears 1. In close combat, in shooting, I managed to take a few shots and killed 1 full base of swarm and put 1 wound on another. And then in close combat, I wiped out all but 1 wound left, so that 1 base has 1 wound remaining. So they will hopefully be wiped out next turn. And so here's just an overview picture of what the battlefield looks like at the end of my turn 2. So that brings us to Saurian Ancient, turn 3. So my opponent decided to charge in with the jungle swarms and the wizard into the flank of my militia. I thought this was a mistake on my opponent, but yeah. They actually kitted the character out to be somewhat fighty, even though it's a caster, so it worked out alright, I guess. These troops moved up to start taking shots at... these guys charged my unit of 10 handgunners, and I elected to flee, and my opponent caught them and he wiped them out. Over here on the right side, you can see my opponent move these skinks around. They appeared this turn and came out of the forest and started taking shots at my Grenadiers. And then my opponent charged in with the Saurian warriors into my militia. So that's probably not going to end well for me, but that's okay. They're more or less a speed bump. So here's what the battlefield looks like at the end of my opponent's movement phase on turn 3. In Magic Phase, my opponent got 11 power dice. And luckily, my opponent managed to... because they were in combat and they were facing the wrong direction, couldn't get any spells off except for Beast Within, and I threw all my dice at Beast Within and dispelled it. So luckily, my opponent got no magic this turn. In shooting, these skinks managed to kill 4 of my handgunners, but luckily I passed my panic test. And in close combat over here, my opponent, I killed 2. My opponent wiped out, what was that? This unit had 18, and I now have 7 left, so 11. It was an auto break for me, and my opponent decided to pursue and take my banner. In close combat over here, I easily wiped out the swarm. And then combat over here, wow, look at all those militia. Yeah, I threw my captain at his wizard, and he had a 4-up ward save, and so between me fluffing and my opponent's 4-up ward save, I did nothing to the caster. My militia managed to do 1 or 2. Oh, you can see I did. Looks like 1 wound onto the swarms, and the swarms killed 6 or so, and the wizard killed 3 or so. So overall, I lost by 9. Luckily, I was steadfast because I had a rank, and I had a captain, so I could roll 3 dice instead of 2 dice for my leadership test. However, I decided to roll, I believe, a 9 on a leadership of 8, and I broke, and my opponent pursued me and wiped out that unit. So that was hurt. That hurt. That was 2 banners down in 1 turn. So the only banner I have left is with my heavy infantry. So if they lose their banner, then that means I will automatically lose this game. So that brings us to Empire of Sonnstahl turn 3. So in movement, I just kind of moved my grenadiers around to start taking shots at pretty much anything I could get a chance at. I've turned my handgunners around this turn because they weren't going to do anything because they were facing the wrong direction anyways. And I decided to just march my heavy infantry just as fast as they could towards my opponent's deployment zone. In the encounter phase, I managed to get another carnivorous plant, which I threw on top of these guys, and it, I think, managed to actually eat 1 or 2 of them. Other than that, there was no combat. There was shooting, but my shooting was more or less ineffective. Killed a couple Saurus warriors, put a couple more wounds on a couple swarms, but overall, not effective. So that brings us to Saurian Ancient, turn 4. So these guys, I believe they reform. I think this picture was actually taken before they reformed. Over here, my opponent again just reformed with the different skinks and jungle swarms, and then my opponent's last unit of skinks arrived on the battlefield, and my opponent put it in this forest right here. For magic, my opponent got 5 power dice, sorry about the blurry picture, and threw them at Swarm of Insects. Either my opponent got this and didn't either do anything on my grenadiers, or I threw all my dice and spelled it. I don't remember. Either way, it wasn't a big problem. In shooting, my opponent shot these guys into my heavy infantry, killed 2 or 3, but luckily I didn't have to make a panic test yet, so it was all good. So that brings us to Empire of Sonnstahl, turn 4. So I declared a charge with these guys into the skinks, and my opponent decided to flee, and then I rolled like 3, and my opponent got away. So that was kind of a sad charge there, but at least I'm in the forest now, so I get soft cover. Here's what the battlefield looks like for the rest of the phase. I moved my grenadiers in the center here to try to start trying to chaff up the Saurus warriors and take shots with them. The other ones, the few remaining ones, are just trying to put as many shots as they can onto the jungle swarms. For power dice, I managed to get 5 power dice, and I do have a wizard. Well, I don't have a wizard, I have a ring of fire, so I threw them at the ring of all of my dice at the ring of fire. I miscast, but oh well. I need to get a spell off, or otherwise the magic item was worthless anyways. So I did manage to get off Fireball and Raging Fire on the skinks that were fleeing in front of my heavy infantry. I think I killed 9. No, my opponent only had 10. I killed 7, excuse me. I killed 7, my opponent had 3 left. They were already fleeing, so they didn't have to make a panic test. And then my Ring of Fire blew up after this. In shooting phase, these grenadiers, they put out their pistols and they managed to kill 5 Saurus warriors in this round of shooting. And not only that, my opponent failed their panic test, being cold-blooded, 3 dice, and my opponent never fails cold-blooded tests, but in this turn actually failed a panic test and ran away from my grenadiers. And I think that right there probably will save the game for me, is I broke this unit enough that it won't be able to catch up with my other unit. So this is what the battlefield looks like at the end of my turn 4. So this brings us to Saurian Ancient, turn 5. So my opponent charged these skinks into the back of my grenadiers, rallied these Saurus warriors, and rallied the skinks that were actually fleeing from my heavy infantry last turn. I'm not sure what this picture is showing. Might just be a repeat picture. Sorry about that. So this is what the battlefield looks like at the end of my opponent's movement phase. For magic, my opponent got 7 power dice and threw up Swarm of Insects. As you can see, they got double 6s, so I went ahead and let them have this. I believe they threw this at the grenadiers that were shooting at their Saurus warriors. It killed off. So okay, here's the miscast. Unfortunately, the caster took no wounds. My opponent rolled like a 1 to wound himself, and it did manage to blow up another swarm. So at least my opponent now only has 2 swarms. But either way, it's not going to be really detrimental to my opponent. And my opponent managed to kill off 2 of my grenadiers. In shooting phase, my opponent shot and killed 4 of my handgunners. They failed the panic test and started to run away. And in close combat, my opponent killed 2 of my grenadiers. I managed to kill 1. I broke, my opponent pursued and wiped me out. And so that brings us to Saurian Ancient turn 5. Oh, excuse me, Empire of Sonnstahl turn 5. I charged my heavy infantry into my opponent's Skinks, which had rallied last turn. My opponent once more again fled, but this time I managed to catch them, running like 11 inches this turn, and catch them and wipe them out. And this brought me into my opponent's deployment zone, and my opponent no longer had any units close enough to stop this unit or to wipe them out, given that they only had one turn next. So we actually ended the game right here because I managed to succeed and get the objective. I managed to get a banner across the battlefield into my opponent's deployment zone. So overall, it was a really fun game. It was a lot tougher than I thought it was going to be. I thought getting a battle into my opponent's deployment zone would be relatively easy. I was wrong. I was really wrong. I did manage to do it, but luckily I had multiple units that could do it, and I did manage to push my way through, so that was good. I really liked the idea where we had skinks ambushing from forests, so I think that'll be a continued theme throughout this campaign. Is skinks will have the ambush special rule from forests, or at least in some scenarios they will. Other than that, I mean, I don't have an MVP for this army. I mean, I guess it'd be my heavy infantry because they're the ones that won me the game. But other than that, I didn't really have any concerns or thoughts about the game. But if you guys have any concerns or questions, or if you guys have any ideas for future battles, that'd be fantastic. If you could put those in the comment section below, that would be amazing. Also, if you saw if I made any mistakes other than obviously the home-ruled games, you can add those into the section below as well. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed it. The next game I will hopefully be playing this weekend, so hopefully I'll have it up within a week, fingers crossed, depending on how real life works. But just to give you a tidbit on that one, I will be defending a somewhat fortified position as my opponent tries the last-ditch efforts to stop me from getting a foothold and building a fortification. But other than that, yeah, if you guys haven't hit like and subscribe, go ahead and hit those. That'd be fantastic. And as always, game on.